Hi, my name is Steve Eady. I'm with the Sauk Valley Voter Fair. Actually just finished up, and we're now interviewing some candidates. And I have with me Lex Green today. He's running as a Libertarian for governor for the state of Illinois. Welcome, Lex.
Thank you.
In all fairness to Lex, most of our candidates did get in advance a list of questions. Lex did not, so if he looks blindsided, it's because he is. But most candidates did get them, so we'll just take that into account as we go through these questions. But let me start right off, Lex, and ask you the question that is on most Illinois voters' mind is do we have a budget crisis in the state of Illinois?
Do we have a budget crisis? We're $10 billion in debt just for fiscal year 2010 alone. We take out bonds yearly to pay for our expenditures. We don't pay as we go. We don't even come close. Our expenditures right now won't be paid off until the year 2045. I think we have a budget crisis.
Yeah. And you know, one of the largest parts of the budget, if not the largest part, is actually Medicaid. And what's interesting is the healthcare legislation in Washington is going to put mandates on the state of Illinois if that legislation passes, of course, which most people think it is. I wanted to get your thoughts on, one, how you feel spending should be reduced in the state of Illinois, if you believe that. It sounds like you do.
Well, yes, I do.
And two, how do you figure out this whole medical reform system if the federal government then imposes certain mandates on the state of Illinois?
This is a very complicated question because as governor, I'm going to have certain constraints, and Medicaid is an interesting program because it threatens to bankrupt not only Illinois but all the states that participate. And interestingly, it is an opt-in program. We could opt out. Most of the Republicans I've talked to or seen at the forums all suggest we need to reform Medicaid. But if we don't find a way to sunset our involvement, come up with a state alternative or some other way of getting rid of the program, we're eventually going to be bankrupt just because of the one program alone. As far as all the other expenditures, the health care bill, I think it's unconstitutional all the way around. I don't have to read the individual details. It's unconstitutional. But in spite of the fact that the Senate voted itself the power to do this, it takes our tax money at a rate that's unprecedented, and it interferes with private business in an unprecedented rate as well. So, of course, as a libertarian, I want smaller government. This is going in exactly the wrong direction. How we combat that, though, is going to be very difficult, especially in a state controlled by a Democratic General Assembly, which is going to be sympathetic to the President and the House and Senate's aims. We need to find some way to not participate in that program. That's going to be an uphill battle given the political climate in Illinois right now.
Sure. Well, let's talk about spending then. If you were elected governor, how would you cut spending? Where would you cut spending? What are some ways of reducing this massive deficit that you said is over $10 billion?
Yes. Well, this is the problem because as a libertarian and someone who believes personally in smaller government, I would like to reduce the size of government and in doing so reduce the taxes. So for every dollar of spending I reduce, I should be able to reduce a dollar of revenue. Unfortunately, we already have a $10 billion deficit, so I have to cut $10 billion worth of spending before I can even cut a single dollar of revenue. So that means drastic cuts. But I don't want to go in the first year, assuming that I have enough power over the General Assembly to make all this happen. I don't want to go in and just decimate the Illinois economy by crippling the government. My plan is to use the Illinois Policy Institute guidelines for balancing the budget, which is to roll back our spending across the board to 2006 or 2007 levels. That alone would have balanced the budget this year. So in doing that, that gives us a platform by which we get back to that level spending baseline. And then we can start thinking about going in and drastically reducing the scope of government. It's very common for a lot of my opponents on both sides of the aisle to target the Department of Commerce as one of many, many examples. This is a $5 billion, and I may have the number off, but it's in that range. It's billions of dollars every year that we spend to basically subsidize a small number of businesses here in the state. So we can either zero that out, or I may propose leaving the Small Business Administration part intact for a temporary basis until we get back on our feet. But we'll have to go in and drastically reduce the number of agencies we have, or reduce the mission. As governor, I will be able to define what the mission is of most of those agencies, and we can narrow that down to just essential services.
Well, let me ask you about another opportunity, or if there's other opportunities for cutting that you know off the top of your head, but let me give you one. You know, Governor Blagojevich basically changed the Medicaid mandates, so now a child whose parents make a family income of $70,000 a year still can get free health care, payer-funded health care. What about repealing that back to, say, $35,000 or $40,000, which actually, if it's $40,000, would be the average income of an American family. So, I mean, how is that one place you could cut back? Is there any other places you feel that just are just kind of out of whack with reality-based legislation to keep a balanced budget?
If you're talking about Medicaid in particular, we're kind of stuck right now. If we adhere to federal law, we are on a temporary restraint from lowering our eligibility. So whatever is in place now, we're stuck with for several years. I'm not sure what the sunset is on that. But once we get to that into the federal mandate, then we can start lowering those types of eligibility requirements. Right now, 1 in 5 people in Illinois get some sort of Medicaid assistance. Mm-hmm. That's crazy. 20% of the population is taking money out of the other people's pockets, but that's only for one program. So there's many other places where we can save money as well. One of the places is the Board of Education. We don't have a Department of Education, that's federal, but the Board of Education is a constitutionally mandated agency in Illinois, but its scope has grown so drastically that we've spent, I think it was in 2008, $7.5 billion on education. And I have to ask, did your children get $7.5 billion worth of education? I know mine didn't.
Well, that's a good segue into a question I have for you, actually.
Okay.
Right now, I currently pay property taxes at a certain level that I can put through essentially 1.25 children through the public school system.
Sure.
I put 3 children, and through God's help, I put 3 children through a private school for $500 less than that. I guess what I'm getting at is asking you if you believe in A, some sort of voucher system, or B, is there ways to make Illinois schools more competitive?
Very interesting. First of all, I'm wondering, you say you sent them to a private school for less money, but did you also not pay in taxes what it would have cost for them to go to the public school as well?
Yeah, I paid for public school and I paid for
Exactly. So you got double
double dipped.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But this is part of the problem.
And behind $500, I might add.
Yes. So, and this is unfair.
Yeah.
And I think this is what the voucher program is meant to solve. I am for the voucher program with this caveat, is that actually I don't think that is the proper role of the state government. We right now send, again, $7.5 billion through the Department of, or the Board of Education, and they trickle it back down to the individual districts. Most districts probably get something like a third of their revenues from that board. And in the process, they're told whether or not they can have charter schools, whether or not they can have a voucher system.
Right.
I don't understand why, if your school district wants to have a charter school, they can't just go ahead and do that. Why do we ask permission? Why do we pay $7.5 billion to ask permission? This is certainly counter to my philosophy in education or in anything. I am for open enrollment, which means that individual school districts can negotiate with each other something like a voucher system without the state being involved with it. Okay. Now, this is a radical departure from our current paradigm, sure, thinking of how we do education, and it's going to be a hard sell, but I stand by the concept that free markets keep the prices the lowest. So anything that increases competition brings up quality and drives down prices. So if we want